Welcome to SEC Football Live, 440 Sports. Stephen Godfrey, Braden, Gall. You can get involved in the show if you'd like. We are live, of course, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. And as soon as Blue Sky allows me to go live on their platform, we'll do that as well. At 38 Godfrey, of course. And we are brought to you by ML Rose. 6 great locations across the Nashville market in Middle Tennessee. If you are in town visiting, if you're in town and you're an alumni and you live here of another school, it's not Vanderbilt, and you're coming to or you're going to a Vanderbilt game, swing by ML Rose. Great craft beer, great burgers, all the best stuff. Great happy hours on Saturdays and Sundays, getting you ready for football. If you need a place to watch some games on Saturdays in Nashville, ML Rose is your spot. Godfrey, good afternoon, sir.
Did you say 6 locations?
6. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Do you remember when there used to be just the one, and it was
just
like an
old?
I think it was an old gay bar actually, and it got turned into an ML Rose.
You're talking about the ML Rose in Melrose, right?
In Melrose on 8th Avenue.
Yeah.
That was a neighborhood haunt like many years ago when we were all single and childless and poor.
Was Charlotte Avenue the second one? We're getting into trivia
Ooh,
now.
I don't think so.
No?
No, because Charlotte Avenue opened up later. But it's, this is not what I intended to do, but football and sports and like community does this to you. I have very different, because I know you have a very didn't you tell a story about how like as soon as you guys got done with like daycare, you went to ML Rose and celebrated not having daycare and then ended up with another kid after that? Probably celebrated a little too much maybe that night.
Well, those 2 events were not in the same span of time, but yeah, we did think we were done with daycare after we had our 2 sons. And the afternoon before we checked the last son out of daycare before preschool, we went to ML Rose and got
a couple beers. Nice.
Yeah, a couple few.
Yeah, nice. They got
unfortunately a long time ago, and yes, another child happened.
And you can eat their great bottle caps, by the way. They've got amazing bottle caps. They got the fried pickles in there. They're delicious. Anyway, look, we're going to talk about Georgia maybe losing control of the SEC. Ole Miss is proof of concept. Tennessee, Georgia coming up. Jalen Milroe and Alabama doing exactly what we said they were going to do against LSU's defense. We got South Carolina, probably pretty good at football, apparently. Missouri, Oklahoma, just a lovely football game. Or I take that back, a lovely fourth quarter of football, I should say. And I think credit to Tom Hart, who my favorite quote of the weekend on a broadcast, I think Tom Hart said something like, "It's amazing when you play a game of football and the best 2 passes were by a running back and a punter." It's a great line. It's a great line by Tom Hart. So we're going to get to all that on the show today. And if you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up, notifications turned on, share on Twitter. If you're listening on the podcast app, 5 stars. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. But quickly with ML Rose, I have such a very distinct, and I think football does this to people. We remember certain players in certain times of our lives. Music does this, certainly, right? When you're young and you have a certain emotional response to a band or a song. But I have a very emotional response to ML Rose's locations, but very different, because the 8th Avenue one is like when I was starting at like Rivals.com and Athlon, and I was, I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I was young, and I needed a good happy hour to even like have a third beer, to be able to afford the third beer. And then my memory of the Charlotte Avenue location, which is just west of downtown, kind of where you live now, not to give it all away. Sorry, guys.
Doxing me.
But it's in your area, I should say. Sorry. The Charlotte Avenue location is like it's the first place that my wife and I went and got a beer post second childbirth, because she could then have a beer. After the child was born. We sat outside. They have a beautiful little putting green sort of patio area right there on Charlotte Avenue. Had a Lovebird, shout out Jackalope. If you're in town, go to the Jackalope Brewery. Also great local beer. And I remember having beers there, but like the one because mom had to go home and like, take a nap and like breastfeed and do all that stuff. So
we
can very different.
We can stretch this out. I didn't even know they had the one on Charlotte and 11th, which I think that area now has a name. It's like as you cross into downtown, I think it's like called like the Capitol neighborhood or North Capitol.
Well, there's Capitol View, which is the new location.
View, is that what? Okay, yeah, that's okay. I didn't know that one existed.
Yeah. Some people are trying to call it the North Gulch. I don't think that's going to catch on, but
no, because you've left the Gulch.
Yep, Capitol View is there's an HCA building there. I know that for very specific reasons. Okay. I want to. So rankings come out on Tuesday. This is now our second week of rankings. Rankings aren't that important. They don't really mean that much. There's lots of games to be played in the SEC. Lots of things are going to happen. It's going to work itself out.
And yet, everyone in the South is big hurt this morning.
Look, but here's the deal. I'm going to spin this into an angle. I try to start this show with angles that people don't anticipate. I think it's great because it means that you cannot claim SEC, PN bias about putting in the SEC and overvaluing the conference. If anything,
you definitely can. Heather Dinich was out on SportsCenter. They started the narrative immediately after this weekend's game, talking about, well, don't discount a 3-loss team. That ain't because of the Big Ten.
Okay, stop. What I'm saying is if all the Big Ten teams and BYU and all these teams are going to be ranked ahead, and I think our friend of the pod, Billy C., one of my favorite lines in one of his stories this week was, look, if the people upset about the rankings are the Pentagon and the SEC, you've done some interesting rankings. And I agree with that because Army, by the way, also wildly underrated in these rankings, in my opinion. But the SEC is a spot or two lower on every single team. It makes no sense for Indiana. And again, I'm doing this just for like the sake of the conversation, not like that I actually care or think it's important. But Indiana and BYU almost lose games where they play their worst offensive game of the year. They both played their worst offensive game of the year and almost lost to 5-5 football teams this past weekend and jumped Tennessee, which won easily without its starting quarterback. It doesn't make sense, but you don't need it. My point is you don't need it to make sense.
It makes total sense. We flipped narratives on region this year where the Big Ten has a collection of the Big Ten has separation, the SEC doesn't. And so this year, what I've seen is the narrative bias from those two regions, one saying basically arguing on behalf of separation. So arguing on behalf of undefeated teams, controlling what they can control, handling their business. That's been the narrative out of the Midwest and the Northeast. And then in the South, all of a sudden it's, we should have a 3-loss at-large bid. And it's because there's a sort of flattening out, as we've discussed, in the SEC. There are imposter SEC teams all over the map. Indiana's not the one that bothers me at all because you can't, in my opinion, in the Power 2 conferences, fault anyone who wins every game on their schedule, regardless of how they win it.
Especially as dominant as they've been.
Penn State is hard to justify. So this is not a joke, but if you do watch Maction, Bowling Green won last night, and Braden, they might be the second best win right now in the Penn State resume. I don't have a problem with the SEC being underneath all this and all of the histrionic nonsense. The SEC network is like already deployed the fleet of narrative builders. The Penn State one feels really odd to me. The thing that I also don't like is that some of these schools aren't really going to be able to suss it out. Like, I don't see Penn State's backstretch being testy.
I mean, Minnesota, they play Minnesota on the road in a couple of weeks, maybe. But
they have Purdue, Minnesota, and Maryland.
Yeah,
that's not going to provide any more information about the team. Now, we can say the same thing in the SEC where Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Missouri all avoided each other this year. This is just going to happen. And this is why these big conferences are bad for college football. This is going to keep happening.
But that's a different conversation.
I'm actually okay with Army right now, only because they somewhat pseudo control their fate. The fact they have Notre Dame.
No, I know.
If they beat Notre Dame, I feel like it. The ones I sort of notice instantly are the ones where it's like you've killed Wazoo. They're just there like as a sort of ceremonial thing. Their best win.
Not that this is an SEC show, but their best win is basically as good as Indiana's best win, which is the same, Washington.
Right, and yet because they lost to Boise, they're
also a very good team.
18. There's not week to week, and I saw a lot of people absent of the Big Ten versus SEC nonsense. I saw a lot of people just say, "Hey, like." The committee's justification process when Ward Manual comes out week to week, they're contradicting themselves. I mean, you had SEC Network hosts on social media yesterday saying that no one involved at any college football program should be a part of the active committee.
Okay, look,
it's been that way for 11 years.
It has been every single committee ranking.
There's a lot of people who are just really upset in the SEC right now.
I am an SEC grad. You are an SEC grad. I am also technically an ESPN employee. But I do not want to be lumped into any, and I love all those folks. I'm friends with Darinoka. You know all these people too. I am friends with Chris Doring. I am friends with Cole Kubelik. I am friends with Alyssa Lang. They are great people. I don't
think Cole did it.
They also have a job to do.
I let Cole off the hook.
But I don't take my marching orders from anybody. And I think what's fun about, and this is ultimately because I would just argue, like, look, I think you could argue Bama is one spot too low or Tennessee's one spot too low. I'm not talking about a Big Ten versus SEC thing. I'm just saying the SEC on a whole appears to be maybe a slot or two lower than I would have them. And that doesn't matter because all of this is going to change, on Saturday. But ultimately what I like as someone who like you, loves all conferences, loves all teams, loves all rivalries, enjoys every Saturday in every conference since the day I got into this job, because I've covered it nationally like you have since 2005. And I watch all of them and I appreciate all of them. But what I hate are these conspiracy theories sometimes that just fall into preconceived confirmation bias territory where you don't get what you want as a fan, regardless of what conference you root for or team you root for, where you don't get what you want and you think, oh, the refs are out to get me. The conference office is out to get me. So-and-so is out to get me. And I just like the idea that this is why I started the season by saying, I hope Missouri goes 10-2, no disrespect to Missouri, and gets left out, because then we can just say like, no, look, they weren't good enough. They didn't get in and there's no bias towards the SEC. Let's move
Braden,
move the fuck on.
But that's not what's happening. And I would also say it's a convenient vantage point to say, I wanted, hey, I dismiss all these conspiracy theories when people don't get what they want. That's because the SEC gets what it wants. This territory gets what it wants. I find it frustrating because the argument that the SEC fans who just want more SEC always better, SEC must be in. The problem is this. SEC on SEC games and championship situations, I've heard multiple arguments over the years from different SEC fans. It's the best teams. It provides the best product. That's not true. SEC on SEC championship games have sucked before, right? It doesn't provide the best product. It doesn't represent the sport. Okay,
you're picking one game.
The other problem is it's a pretty significant game though, and it set the course of playoff development. I mean, it was a negatively impactful game in terms of television ratings, in terms of revenue for other conferences. Like, it's bad for the sport. I don't know how many times I have to say this.
Well, are you talking championship games in general because they were money grabs created by Roy Kramer in 1992? Like, is that what you're saying? Because I agree with
postseason. That. Well, one thing we can get to in a second is this is more of a question than it is like a opinion or a gripe. I don't know how the SEC championship game is going to maintain down the road. Like, the relevancy of conference championship games is about to, I think, suffer mightily.
Well, okay, let me ask you this. Does it go down in the Big Ten and the SEC, see previous conversations about access and getting what they want?
Right. Yeah, the 14 auto bid thing.
But then it goes way up in the other conferences. So there's tremendous
it goes way up because the SEC and the Big Ten are boxing everyone out. And then, like last night's bracket is a great example. The only way you're going to get in is by winning the ACC or the Big 12. That's the message we're sending. There is no way you can get in without doing that. And what's really scary about that is that because these other conferences have had to build their numbers to stay relevant and chase those other two conferences, you're going to have paths this year and next year where you may miss the damn championship game.
So I don't want to belabor this because I want to move on and talk about how much like really interesting stuff happened on a field last weekend and coming up this weekend. But I do think, and again, part of my own personal journey through college football over the last 25 years is, and this is a good thing for you SEC folks listening and watching, the SEC chant has largely disappeared. That was a huge thing in like 2005 when we got into
you don't think it exists?
So this, and then in my world, in my experience, because I spent literal years on Sirius XM radio telling SEC fans to stop rooting against your own best interest.
Okay.
Like now, which again is baked into way larger forces than just Kentucky fan rooting for Bama, which is against Kentucky's own best interest, et cetera, et cetera. It's baked into like regionalism and territorialism and the Civil War. Like I can go on and on and on about like the Southern pride and why they love college football and why it's so important to them, and et cetera. But I personally have dealt with so many intellectually dishonest sort of arguments from folks who have motive. And I like to believe that you and I, this is why I listen and read certain people that have covered this sport. There are certain people that I believe are doing it because it's their honest opinion, whatever that opinion might be. It could be about any team or any conference or any coach, because they think they've done the work, they've studied all the angles, and they have an opinion. I may not agree with it, but I think it's an intellectually honest opinion and conclusion that they've come to. I'd like to think that you and I are in that group. I may think a 9-3 Georgia is better than a 1-loss Indiana or a 1-loss BYU. And I've come to that opinion because I stayed up late on Saturday night to watch every play of the BYU Utah game. And because I watched most every game in every conference for 25 years. You may disagree with that. I may be okay with BYU getting in over Georgia because that's a different conversation. What's the committee's goal and the playoffs goal versus who's better? But what's frustrating to me over the years is the intellectual dishonesty, not to tie it into anything else that's happening in our society, but intellectually dishonest opinions with motive. That is not what my opinion is. That's not ever been.
Every opinion has motive, but I would agree with you in that. Here's what scares me the most about the SEC narrative dominance and the fact they have this partnership with the games provider. I don't see it ever stopping, and it was really telling to me to see SEC network hosts and SEC personalities immediately come in, and immediately after the second playoff, what do we call these? Fake brackets? What do we call these things? By the way, seriously, what do we call them on Tuesday night?
You mean the brackets or the rankings? There's rankings, I guess.
Do we call them? Yeah, this week's rankings. Okay.
Yeah.
After the second set of 12-team rankings, we had SEC network personalities, employees, reporters, all this kind of stuff.
This is their job, though. That's their job.
Their job is actually to appeal. This is where I'm going. Their job is to appeal to the SEC because the SEC has a hand in approving what talent appears on their network. So it's inherent bias. These conference networks are not good for the discernment of information or like the idea of objective analysis and journalism.
But what is wrong with having some state-run radio in your diet?
Here's the deal. They come out and stump immediately for playoff expansion. The first time the SEC doesn't dominate the top end, and because when Georgia hit that graphic as the team out last night, I started laughing because I knew what was going to come next. And what came next was a rationalization for expansion.
But that's not. But you're Braden, arguing the intellectually dishonest point.
It's not intellectually dishonest. If there's a 14 bracket, the SEC network is going to argue that the first time an SEC team that they feel is of merit is left out, that we should expand. There's a 12-team bracket. They're now arguing it should be 14 or 16.
Right.
This is not going to stop.
But what you're fighting,
why not just hold your own postseason?
You're fighting
hold your own postseason.
What I'm trying to say is that they are like, I don't have a problem with state-run propaganda being a part of your sports consumption diet. But some people like that. It's okay. You don't have to like.
That's fine. But
Godfrey,
guess what?
hang
it's
on,
not labeled as state-run propaganda. That's the biggest problem.
It says SEC on it. Just chill out. Hang on.
The level of IQ and education that a consumer has on what is ESPN and what is actually manufactured by a conference network, there is no line of discernment.
Joel Klatt is paid largely by the Big Ten and is out there shilling for Penn State and Indiana all the time. Tim Brando does it too.
Sucks. But it shouldn't be.
I don't disagree with you. But
you just asked me, why is that not okay?
No. What I mean is as a fan, there are times, and I do that. Like I cover the Titans here locally. Great, truly great. Maybe the greatest beat reporter ever in Titans history. Jim Wyatt was hired by the Titans. He crossed the street and he writes for the Titans now.
Yes.
That is state-run propaganda. And every now and then, sometimes I don't have a problem with a consumer of Titans coverage wanting that coverage every now and then. What I'm saying is I don't want it. I know you don't want it. But what I'm saying,
Braden, do the Titans run the playoff?
No. But hear me out on this. You are fighting against a person making a motivated, self-interested argument that is largely not. Fake. I'm not going to say intellectually dishonest, but it's close.
Fake.
And what I'm saying is, don't argue with those people. Like, don't argue with fools. At a distance. Look, you can't tell who's who.
Don't wrestle with a pig. You get dirty. The pig likes it. But here's the problem: all the pigs are in the highest positions of exposure because ESPN owns the playoff, and they have a business partnership with the largest conference.
Well, Georgia's better than BYU, though. So, let's move on. That's my opinion, and it's not biased. I'm not getting paid by the SEC. I've not been told by ESPN to say that. It's my intellectually honest opinion.
Braden, why not just have your own playoff?
Look, it's
just have your own playoff.
It's going to get there eventually. I did not want to turn this into a 22-minute conversation.
There's no representation. Like no one has any real interest anymore in actually representing college football. Let's just be honest. I don't want them to change their opinions. I just want them to be honest about it. That's it. Don't change anything. I can't change anything. It's $1 billion enterprise. Just don't tell me you're lying. Or tell me you're lying. Don't tell me that this is coming from a place of sober analysis.
I think there are plenty of good. This is what I've said all along and for 25 years. And it's one of the things I've learned. If you want intellectually honest, objective, fully fleshed out, thought through conclusions and opinions, you got to find those people. It's no different today than it was 20 years ago. It's why you and Split Zone Duo have done well. But Split Zone Duo doesn't appear in front of 6-7 million people on a Saturday morning, and they have created a propaganda machine that belies the basic facts, which is objective, as objective idealistically as you could be in actual reporting, but then sober analysis. They don't do it. It sucks. And your alternative is the dissenting parties partnership with the Big Ten on Fox, and that sucks too. So the only question I had for you in all of this is like, forget all of that, the structures of all the stuff you're talking about. Just you and I talking here. Mm-hmm. It's not like some illegal take that makes me some uninformed sheep of the power structure to think that Georgia could be better than BYU or Indiana. Right now, Georgia can't run a football, and they've lost. They're going to end up losing. How many games do you think they've lost by the end of the year? And that's your opinion, man. Well, no, it's not. It's not my opinion that they couldn't run the ball against Ole Miss. It's a discernible fact. No, that's not that. Sorry. What I mean is your opinion is Georgia's not as good as BYU, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that because I think you've come to that conclusion honestly. I disagree. But Braden, you keep trying to oversimplify it to make it conversational, and that's fine. But you're also not saying, "Hey, Georgia got left out, so we should expand the playoff," because that's not right. We want as many SEC teams as possible, and I don't want what they're doing. Okay, not everybody, like you said, not everybody, but just the people who work for the SEC. Big Ten Network is not advocating for that this morning because they're for the top 5. Yeah, because this is the first time that script has been flipped in the playoff era, where normally, guess what? Hey, that's all I was saying is the script is flipped. That's all. Do you remember when the first bracket came out? The very first bracket in 14 or whatever. Yeah, do you remember? Oh, it was Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and the whole world thought everyone was in the bag for the SEC, even though even though Ole Miss and Mississippi State make no money for ESPN. They put six teams up there. The 4 and the 2 out. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Auburn, and Alabama were in the 6. 4 of the 6 teams. And guess who doesn't make ESPN any money? Mississippi State and Ole Miss. They don't make ESPN any money. Well, I can get into that. That's because Mike's Live, the smartest thing he ever did was he didn't ever individualize any of the brands. Sure. So you can't have Ole Miss without Alabama. You can't have Alabama without Mississippi State. That's the smartest thing ever done in the history of the SEC. Oh, God. You're exhausting sometimes. Now let's talk. You're not wrong, but you're exhausting. Let's talk about Georgia, why they lost to Ole Miss, and the proof of concept for Ole Miss, which is that Georgia now will play Tennessee and has to our entire conversation here, which is a 3-loss Georgia team. Even if all 3 losses are against top 8 playoff teams, I'm sure everyone else in America could handle that. Georgia has not handled it well so far. Now, they're a 10-point favorite against Tennessee, but Tennessee is built very similarly to Ole Miss in terms of pressuring the quarterback, great defensive line, hasn't taken a quarter off the entire game. Ole Miss can do that, leading the nation in sacks. Had they not kicked so many field goals, that was going to be a true blowout. The only touchdown Georgia scored was on a short field early in the game in the first 5 minutes. They largely were just destroyed after that, which is not something we have said about Kirby Smart's Georgia team in a very, very long time. And so championship game against LSU in 19, I think. Yeah. In terms of the margin of defeat. Totally true. Also way more of a function of the guy on the other side who did that to everybody than it was maybe Georgia. But are you telling me that Jackson Dart isn't Joe Burrow? No, but I do think, look, a little banged up quarterback who's athletic, who likes to run in a system similar. Sounds a lot like Nico Imalaeava potentially going up against a Georgia team that is not blocking very well for Carson Beck right now. And shout out to Simmons too for coming into that game, and he was good. Lane God, talk about trope, talk about stereotypical Lane. Backup quarterback. It's raining. You're going against 4th down, like a national champion in 2 of the last 4 years. We're throwing it over the middle. Yes. I think I'm going to run the RPO. God almighty. Georgia has a lot of problems, but I would say, well, first off, here's what I should say relative to this show specifically. Okay. You retweeted a clip of this show in week
3 or 4. And somehow it found its way onto, like, I guess Aggro Georgia did it
really?
Twitter. I don't know. Because you know what I'm talking about. Because
I do.
One day I'm like looking at mentions. It was like, oh, okay, all right.
It was not on purpose. This is my problem with the internet. It was not on purpose at all.
They took me to task and showed me all these stats and told me how wrong I was about Georgia's offense and Georgia's play calling. Because I'm an evolved soul, didn't keep a list.
Muted it.
Wish I had kept a list. Oh, wait. How fast could we find this?
No, don't go do this. We
because
already wasted too much of people's time.
Where then clip this, and can I just throw this out into the internet and just say, hey guys, all of you Georgia fans who took me to task for saying that there might be some problems systemically with your offense, would you like to have that conversation now? And was I right? The one thing I will let up on was that, because since we've had this conversation, and I've talked about it in different ways and shapes and forms at different shows, the Monken era was restrained by strategy. In other words, like when you have the best talent composite score on defense in history and all that kind of stuff, like there was a certain level of restraint, and it was a little bit of like, hey, I'm not going to beat you with an ace. I'm going to beat you with an 8 because I can.
Yeah.
And there was some level of, I have had people kind of talk me back and be like, Monken, there was a level of creativity there, but it was always match and response to what the defense was doing. So here's what's happened. They've graduated a lot of defense, right? The league has leveled out talent-wise because of NIL and portal. And your offense now goes from, hey, they were pretty conservative there, but it didn't really matter, to, hey, your offense is starting to get kind of like identifiable, and like you're like, defenses are pattern matching, and now it's, oh, your offense is bad and your quarterback can't get you out of situations. And I don't know, like a lot of that was his decision making, Braden, in previous games. And now I'm starting to think it's more of a system failure because he's not responsible for a bad run game.
So you just did something that just people do in general around all sports conversation, which is like there's no sort of like middle ground. With an offense or a defense, like Georgia right now, 6.14 yards per play. That's 48th in the nation. By definition, that's not bad. It's just not Georgia. It's not good.
It's not national title.
It's not good. So there's
Georgia told me they had one of the best offenses in their fans said we have a national title offense.
Hey,
but
Snowflake, settle down.
Oh, it's not me. I'm just responding to the fine listeners of this program. I just wanted to know what happened. You kept telling me how wrong I was about the structural issues.
They're going
to fire Bobo so fast.
I don't think anybody that was responding to the tweets and in the Aggro Georgia message board communities are the people that were listening to the show, because I had to respond to many of them saying, you obviously didn't listen to the entire conversation.
That's the danger of social media.
I know. And I hate it too, but it is what it is. That's why you can come find me on Blue Sky. I'm over there skeeting and tooting away. Come on over. Blue Ski. The sun is warm and the weather's great. There's no humidity. It's wonderful. Here's my question about all of this. And I guess we could probably throw other stuff into this. Tennessee, Heupel's offense, the defense, Nico. We could throw Ole Miss and the proof of concept around paying for the defensive front, which showed up finally for them in a really, really big way. We could talk about Brian Kelly at LSU. We could talk about, I guess you could throw Shane Beamer in there too with what they've accomplished this year at South Carolina. I want to know what are the larger – we've talked about the flattening of the top of the SEC, a little bit more balance, some of its quarterback, some of its larger trends, some of its rules, roster management. You've kind of alluded to all of them. Is this just a moment of time for Georgia due to all the factors you've alluded to? Is this just a moment in time because of the Ole Miss situation that we've covered ad nauseum for the last 10 months? Is it Tennessee building to one of the oldest teams in the country? I think we still got to repeat that for folks. It's one of the oldest teams in the country, and that's playing itself out in a positive way. Defense for LSU just not rebuilt yet after bottoming out last fall. Are there large-scale, big-picture takeaways from what has happened, or is it just a moment in time?
It could be both, and that's okay. What we attempt to do here every week is a fool's errand, which is you're contextualizing, you're trying to add the sort of perspective in progress. And as data point, which is as dumb as like the playoff thing, is you don't have the data set yet. Yeah. Because I think the latter end of the questions you're asking would be determined from a Georgia perspective on, I don't want to be as foolish as to say this is the same team they're playing this weekend. It's not, but it's very similar in the spectrum of, in terms of like scheme and some of the decision making and some of the philosophy and play calling. Tennessee and Ole Miss are adjacent. Okay,
very much so. Yeah.
I find it hard to believe that Heupel and company watched the Ole Miss game and didn't sort of say like, "Oh, I like this recipe. I can add to it." Because I mean, there are some things, especially that Ole Miss's offense was able to do that I think would fit what Tennessee's capable of. But Tennessee doesn't have a perfect offensive line situation. Ole Miss doesn't have a perfect offensive line situation.
I think Tennessee's O-line is better, I think.
They're better. They're definitely better than Ole Miss's. Yeah. Absolutely. But I think that was one of the things that I've talked about a couple different times in the last couple of weeks with different people is that who has the best offensive line in the nation?
Oh God.
So it's a trick question because I don't
Oregon?
know. Right. So I don't know. I don't know either. And here's why I'm asking.
We've had a big problem at that position in all levels of football for a long time.
So here's what I'm getting at. I think that if you're talking about Georgia and Tennessee for a second, I think the absence of a lockdown, effective, instantly identifiable, dominant offensive line has a lot to do with the parity that we're seeing in this league. And again, that's portal and NIL related. And when I talk to coaches, it's not one thing that you could ask me about. It's all of it. So it's you could take Vanderbilt, for example, before they kind of figured out how to use the portal. What were they doing? They were losing offensive linemen to the portal, right?
To Alabama. Yeah.
Even really talented teams, though, who can afford NIL, who are destination programs, top of the heap, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, et cetera. If you're portaling guys in, let's say some guy has an outstanding year at like NC State or some Big 12 school, doesn't matter, whatever, and they portal into Alabama or LSU. It's not so much a referendum on their talent, but that's not how we've baked this cake for 60 years in modern football. More, if you go back and look at the 2019 LSU team, okay, or you can actually, this is an example we kicked around at SED. The Clemson teams, the first one that beat Alabama for the national title, they weren't really NFL O linemen, like at least at the like the comparable level of like an Alabama, okay, like a 2012 Alabama,
and it's gotten worse.
But they got way worse. But those teams were developed and consistent, and they were grown. They were homegrown, recruited. They're redshirted. There's a cohesion there that hasn't changed in offensive line play, no matter what kind of offense that you run. And I think that Georgia's offensive line issues, and to some degree other schools around the league, I think even when you are a winner in the portal, the way we coach O-line is changing, and the dynamic between O-lines that are patched together, even when you're really talented. Because you hear this is one of those things that transcends college, pro, even high-end high school. Lines have to work together. Lines have to have reps together. And then when you have an injury, which is inevitable in SEC play, it's inevitable at the highest levels of the game, you don't have the depth, even at the really, really good places. Well, you may have the talent, Braden, but not the depth in terms of these guys have worked as rotational guards or rotational tackles together. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And I'll add to that, because when I started at Rivals, one of the first things coaches and scouts told me right away when I got to Rivals was the number one most difficult position to evaluate and then predict was offensive line. The miss rate, right? The miss rate was worse for offensive line than for any other recruits that we used to cover. That's number one. That was before the massive influx of 7-on-7 action at the high school and middle school level. And who does not get reps in 7-on-7? It's literally in the title. The offensive line does not
the 4-on-4.
The offensive line and the defensive line don't get reps because you cannot replicate the physicality it requires to play elite defensive tackle or defensive end or elite offensive tackle and nose guard or whatever. You cannot replicate it in a non-contact situation. And because every other position, and frankly the rules of the game, have benefited those other positions over the course of a 20-year evolution, the fact that we started with the position that is the most difficult to predict and have done nothing but increase the probability of success for every other position over 20 years is now getting to the point where in middle school, high school, college, pro, everybody has offensive line issues. Almost everybody. And that is just a part of the game now.
You could not have done Stanford or even, I think, last year's Michigan. I would say this, and I could be wrong, but this is just me regurgitating what people who do it for a living tell me. By 2026, unless we have fundamental changes in the personnel structure of college football, I think the late teen Stanford or even last year's Michigan team, because it was built around that O-line, I don't think you could replicate that. I think you have to find a new way of doing this.
What's interesting is the one that I'm thinking of now, because then you add the next turn of all of this is lack of depth, as you've alluded to, right?
Yeah.
Now the next wave of hurting the offensive line.
Yeah. Well, because you need like 12 guys.
The one team that I think has done it is Texas. This year, they have almost all homegrown. They're high-level prospects. A lot of them are going to go play in the NFL. They've done a good job keeping them together. They've got a good coach who knows what he's doing. I'm not saying that's going to lead to Texas's success this year or not. I'm not saying it means it. I'm just saying they're one of the few that looks and feels like an old-school offensive line and how it's been built and constructed and deployed. And that could be the thing that makes Texas a national championship team, or it could just be another point of fact about a tech. It could be anything. So,
that it's funny because that was the point of it. It was the point of emphasis when the staff was assembled. So Sark was hired because they knew they were coming to the SEC.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a secret.
Oh, it's not. Kevin L. Teef did that.
Yeah, I mean, like all that was done behind closed doors long before. It didn't matter what Tom Herman did. The first area of emphasis that they looked at was O-line. The second area of emphasis was D-line. And so it was to basically handle, because one of the things in the old Big 12 was that speed, size, they had good talent there, but it wasn't utilized the same way. It has to do with wide splits, and you play more Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. But Texas has, I guess, in the parlance of the youth, Braden, understood the assignment coming into this league.
That's no cap, Godfrey.
Because all right, let's both stop. That's why, like looking at the games this weekend, it's a rough slate, but
it's better in the SEC than anywhere else.
It is weirdly, maybe this is like they're paying it forward because they know SoCon Saturday's coming up.
Well, it's this Saturday too. It's
a little bit, yeah.
You got UL Monroe, New Mexico State, and Mercer all on the schedule this weekend, and Murray
Watch
State.
out, Auburn.
Yeah. That'd be fun,
buddy. You know what? I was having fun with that, but I think Vegas was like, Vegas has basically said no. That's not gonna happen. 24 points. I do. To your point though, Arkansas has gotten up for the Texas game, and they'll host Texas this weekend. So, okay,
they got up for that game in the past. It's only a 13.
They will be up 100%. There's a huge, rich history here in the Nixon years and all that, but
it's great.
No.
The Nixon years. I have not heard that phrase around.
Have you not seen the book? Read the book, Hogs, Horns, and Nixon Coming, where Nixon declares the national champion after the Texas Arkansas.
No, it's just funny. It's a funny way to refer to the era of football in which, like, I would say,
he went and physically got involved in the field, which
pre-integration is what I would say.
Feels like that might happen again in the next 4 years. I don't think that's a game, because I think that it's funny.
President-elect saved the Big Ten. He already has done that during the pandemic.
I'm just gonna.
Oh my God!
I
know.
I don't think that one's gonna be a game. I don't.
Okay.
I think that Texas also has less than zero interest in renewing a rivalry. They don't want any of that. They have no interest in that. That is a one-sided engagement, at least at that level of passion.
All right. We're getting down to the end of the game here. We need to run an up-tempo offense, all right? So LSU Florida is fascinating to me, because if DJ Lagway plays, not only has Florida sort of like loosely alluded to the fact that maybe Billy Napier's coming back, you can comment on that as well.
No, he's coming back.
But DJ Lagway playing is the exact thing that Brian Kelly's defense has proven they cannot handle.
Yeah, how healthy is he though?
I agree. And the game
you'd have to kind of bang him in there, I think.
Probably, but Marcel Reed, Lenore Sellers, Jalen Milroe, DJ Lagway is just as talented as those guys. So if he is even 80%, he's got a chance to run all over them. Vegas agrees. Only a 4-point favorite on the road in the swamp. So keep an eye on that one.
Weird. Hamstring's tough though, man. I want to believe in what you're presenting. I just think it's tough. Yeah.
Why is Napier coming back?
Because it's worse above Napier than it is below him. And
what about in the basketball program?
It's worse above Napier than it is below him. Yes, is the answer.
Yeah.
That's you want me to do a tempo. That's the tempo. It is worse above him than it is below him.
Because above him cannot lure Lane Kiffin right now until it gets fixed.
They don't want Lane. I'm telling you right now that there's some core moneyed areas in Gainesville. I'm not saying I would take it off the board completely. I'm saying it's overvalued as a possibility.
Yeah, but he's proven he can beat Kirby Smart, though. Proof of concept.
We might have more people than you think beat Kirby Smart by the time this decision has to be made in Gainesville.
Josh Heupel will. I don't think Heupel's going to beat him this weekend. I got Georgia.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't.
I just don't. It's not. The spot is tricky.
I like a Tennessee-Texas championship game right now.
I have long predicted all summer that Texas A&M will win that game, and
I know. I was going to revisit that with you. I would like it. We're pro Elko and that staff and everything, but
I did not anticipate Texas A&M being in a situation to win their own way into the conference championship game, which is possible.
It is.
If you look at it. They got to go to Auburn next weekend. That's the only one they've got left on the schedule. South Carolina. We got Shane Beamer deserves a little credit here. That was a look at their scores on the road in conference. And I'm not suggesting that this is like a great Oklahoma team. I'm not suggesting this is a great Kentucky team. It's one of the best Vanderbilt teams ever. But they have gone on the road. They almost beat Alabama on the road. Like, go back and look at that.
Yeah, that game's kind of been slept on.
They probably should have beaten LSU at home early in the year. They destroyed Oklahoma on the road. They destroyed Kentucky on the road. They handled Vanderbilt with relative ease. Who else? Who did I miss? They also beat somebody. I'm drawing a total blank now. Who else did they beat?
South Carolina is the fulcrum for the earlier argument because they're an entertaining, talented team. I don't think they're a good one, and I think that every attribute someone would use to gas up South Carolina would be my answer as to why. Like, I don't think Team X should be in the playoff. I don't think this. Now, let me pivot and comma here. Missouri is fraudulent, and this. For Beamer and for South Carolina being the sort of chaotic bad team with high-end talent. Like South Carolina wins and they have big chunk plays and weird things happen. Like you said, they took Alabama to the hill. But this Missouri team should be 500 or below.
They're 12-point favorite at home. That's all you need to know about that.
Honestly, I would take the spread and then some because Boston College, Vanderbilt, how many times have they done this? Oklahoma last week. I'm missing a game. They have.
I mean, their two losses were by like 100 points.
They have BS their way through the majority of their schedule and provided no dominance and no certainty whatsoever.
No, which is why I would want to. And this is not an anti-Missouri.
Evaporated in those other two games.
This is not an anti-Missouri take or an anti-Eli take. Who says he's still alive in the playoff? What it is it's an anti. I'm tired of being yelled at on social media and from college football fans that the whole world is like, out to get your team because it's not an SEC team. I just want Missouri to get left out at 10-2, so we can just say, look, here's an example of the actual resume mattering and the logo on the shoulder pad not mattering. They didn't get in because they didn't deserve it. That's it. Full stop. There's not a conspiracy. They don't get in because they don't deserve it.
Missouri's signature wins are escaping Boston College at home, a double overtime win against Vanderbilt, and they probably should have lost to Auburn, and they farted it out.
Well, and just for a second to be like a fun football kid again, like it was a really bad football game for 3 quarters against Oklahoma, and I'm glad that game is starting to be a little bit more evenly matched and balanced because they played. I think it was the 94th time they've played, and it's been a rivalry for Missouri, not really for Oklahoma.
Sure,
Eli has sort of stoked that a little bit with some of his portal moves and some of his commentary. But to see the way that fourth quarter unfolded, you got at some point you just step back and go, God, what a great sport. What a great sport. It means nothing. Neither team's going to play for a championship.
I don't know if OU would agree with you per se.
But it was just I'm objective. I'm not a fan of either team. I just thought it was great. It was awesome. It was fun. It was stuff I've never seen before, which is also great. I've never seen 2 scoop and scores in 2 minutes to decide a game on both sides. Never seen that. It was just fun. You had a quarterback catching a touchdown pass. You had a punter going fake punt. It was just fun. It was a fun game. Fourth quarter.
I don't know if, and this is more of an off-season question, that seems like something they should foster to help Oklahoma acclimate to the conference. They do play each other next year, but after that, I don't think any major decisions have been made. I think next year's another Band-Aid schedule.
9 conference games with a 3-6 model. 3-6 model, please.
They're not going to do it.
Please.
It makes the most sense.
God, Nick Saban could have gotten that thing to pass, and he decided not to, and then Auburn followed suit. But anyway, that's for a story. That's another who killed the 9-game conference schedule.com. This is what we can do. We have not talked about LSU Alabama, and I just want to ask you, because you're deep in the weeds. You're deep in the weeds on this. Here's what I want to know. Your family, in-laws.
I know he's going to ask.
Lots of LSU folks. Mm-hmm. Post Nick Saban's arrival in 1999.
Yes.
How many nights in Death Valley would be considered worse than that one?
They would tell. So let me back up. They are in the stages of grief with Brian Kelly, in my opinion, and denial bargaining is probably where most of them are at. I have faced a lot of adversity, in my opinion, which I had on day one of that hiring, that he was the wrong fit. And that was vehemently defended and rubbed in my face by my own in-laws. The 1 year they beat Saban, buddy, you would have thought that 6 national titles in a row were coming. And now that we've had a Heisman winner and no defense, followed up by a good quarterback, not a Heisman winner and no defense,
slightly more defense,
slightly not as assy defense. we're now
it's some swamp ass down there.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So
put some gold bond on that.
It's the bargaining process. They would still tell you, oh well, Ed Orgeron screwed up worse than that. Like, we got blown out by Mississippi State at home to start 2020. And I'm thinking,
that was bad.
He also handed you a perfect national championship. And so that was
Bo Pelini's fault for never changing his coverages.
Well, if you really want to play this out, then they go, well, who hired Bo? And then
no.
People will be like, administration made him. And then
so ultimately, it was a bit of a rhetorical question. I didn't expect you to actually point to a specific night. But
what I'm telling you is, it's like they won't admit it. It's like when you get smacked in a sensitive area of your body, and you're like, this is about to hurt, but there's that 2-second delay. That's LSU as a fandom right now, because losing to Bama is bad. Losing to Bama without Nick, which is something they thought, oh, well, we're done with him. We have the smart coach now. We have the statesman now. Then losing and just getting your ass kicked in every measurable way possible.
Yeah.
Braden, going into that game, actually, screw that. In August, how far apart did you consider those rosters?
For me, I was anti-LSU all summer. So
you did have them outside of the main. Okay. Did you have face that then? Did you have them at 42-13 in Baton Rouge?
No.
Okay.
No. It was alarming because I thought Alabama would win. We both said Alabama was going to win. We both said Milroe was going to do great. We both thought the quarterback run game was going to be the thing, and it was the thing. And the defensive run fits are still the problem. Like this wasn't an unforeseen sort of like how it plays.
But I was expecting 35-23 and a fourth quarter pull away. I wasn't expecting like it was in the quad box, and I'm like, oh.
No, I immediately I was like, I guess I'll watch Oklahoma, Missouri.
Oh no, I think they took a bath on ratings, I'm sure.
It was ugly. It was ugly. And compliments to you asked about offensive line. The one that's getting better and better each week does feel like Alabama to some degree. When you put a great quarterback with a great play caller with a roster that Nick Saban has still the one who constructed, you're going to have a chance to win a lot of games. So
Kalen is especially good at kind of not building the ship on the journey necessarily, but I think they refine very well, which SEC fans would know if they would watch something other than SEC football. This is what he did with Penix. And this is why Washington got better down the stretch and won big games, was because there's such a great self-evaluation mechanism that's going on with finding exactly what they do for Milroe and vice versa. And I think as they've gone along, especially coming out of Vanderbilt, they're a better football team for it. don't waste a loss. That's one thing he's got in common with Nick, right? He didn't waste a loss.
Oh, that's true. I think we hit most of the games from last week. I think Georgia's in for a very similar test, as you've already alluded to, very adjacent, Tennessee and Ole Miss. I think Nick's,
so you're taking Georgia.
Well, Nick's greatest. I was asked about this in Knoxville radio today, and I was asked about this in Kansas City radio yesterday, and I'll be asked about it in College Station radio tomorrow. What's interesting is I think it is you cannot say that the reason Nick Saban is the greatest coach of all time was his ability to remove the human element and create sort of like insane non-human like focus on accomplishing your own personal best.
Okay.
You against yourself, you against yesterday, you whatever cliche you want to use. Yeah. That if that's the thing that made Nick Saban the greatest of all time, and it's then and you take that away, does Kirby Smart have some of that? Sure. Does he have all of it? I don't know. But
no, I don't think so.
But this is one of those times where you want to ride the emotion of allowing adversity and getting punched in the face to sharpen your focus, because they're a bunch of emotional kids. And if that's the case, then the bounce back thing could happen, because this is still a team good enough to go into Texas and beat that ass. So I think they're still good enough to do that.
I think we're evolving to the NFL faster than we want to admit, and I think that situational.
These are kids. These are still kids.
Yeah, but the results are situational.
Isn't that? What do you mean? Expand.
That's not the same Texas and Georgia team. I think these teams are evolving and devolving faster, and we're not able to establish precedent and known entities in this league this year, and it's never been like this. We're going to have to this is one of the reasons Saban quit.
Well, Tennessee, here's the other thing. Here's the other human angle to all of this. Tennessee has not been competitive against Kirby Smart ever.
Oh, it's the monkey. It's like, this is the albatross that for sure. But I think that works in their favor right now.
It works for both of them. I think. So I think it cancels each other. I think it's like, Spider-Man, like it cancels each other out. Because Tennessee should be motivated because they've never played well against Georgia, but Georgia could be overly confident, but also could be focused. Like, you just don't know what it's going to do. I think there's that. Vegas is agreeing with me on this by making it a double-digit point spread.
Yeah, it's crazy to me.
So they're begging. Here's the other angle on that. They are begging you to take Tennessee. They're begging you to take Tennessee, which means they really like Georgia.
I just don't see it. I think that this could be the biggest win in Tennessee's history since '98.
Well, it's bigger than beating Bama 2 years ago.
I think it's more. I think it's about to be a hell of a lot more important, because this one could lock in an inside track to an SEC championship, and that's more important.
They have not won an SEC championship game since
'98, right?
98.
Yeah,
1998.
They went to the championship in 2007. And in 01
my freshman year of college, they lost to, in both years, 01
LSU.
They lost to backup quarterbacks at LSU in both cases.
Was it a Flynn or a Mock or something?
It was Ryan Perilou.
Oh, Perilou, the riverboat gambler.
And Rohan Davey.
Who literally got in trouble for gambling on a riverboat. That's why you got to tell these kids. They don't know.
Yeah, these fucking kids. No, backup quarterbacks from LSU defeated Tennessee's last two trips. And frankly, that Tennessee team, what's funny about that Tennessee team in 01 is they probably would have gone to the national championship game and gotten destroyed by Miami.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with Florida fans extensively about that year, where it's like, the way all that breaks in 01 is kind of fine, because then you just got out of the way of that. Like maybe the most NFL, still to this day, I think the most NFL laden single roster, right? It was that.
What is team. That's interesting to hear. What is worse? Because I was in college at the time, and we burnt couches. We had legal sanctioned fire department couch burning in the fort after the 01 Travis Stevens victory over Florida, because you're talking about Florida getting that. Well, the team that knocked Florida out of that was the 9/11 game that got pushed all the way back to the end of the year. Travis Stevens runs for like 238. They win that game down in the swamp. Rex Grossman gets knocked out of playing for the SEC championship game. Back when Florida, Tennessee, for the kids, would decide not just the SEC East, but a lot of times the SEC and sometimes the national championship. Eddie asks, is Nico playing? I've been told he's going to play. So that's not been reported anywhere, but I think
that's a big part of the spread.
That might be true. That might be true. If you're a Florida fan, are you more upset that you didn't even get to the championship game, or is it worse to lose in the SEC championship game to a backup quarterback at LSU and be even closer? Or would you rather? I'd rather lose in the SEC championship game and beat your rival and have that memory than that. So I understand. My point is, I understand Florida's pain on that one because I
just think Florida
rather...
did not. I think Florida wanted to not go, and there's more of a disdain at Florida for Miami historically than they let on, and I don't think they wanted to do that on a national stage.
I was not connecting the Miami Florida thing in my head there for a second.
It's weird because we're not from Florida, and like my partner on Who Killed College Football and writing partner Ryan Nanny, he's a Florida graduate, and if you're not from not even attending those schools, if you're not from that state, grow up in that state, because remember that's the rivalry that they bailed out of. Like that, if you've ever seen the Miami players talk about like Florida literally took them off the schedule.
Yeah. There's some hatred there.
What is in chat, or is that a bot? No, it's not a bot. There's a Tennessee.
No. Oh, Louis talking about Gall Paul.
Paul.
I don't know actually, Louis. You've said that a lot. Louis been very complimentary of the show and the other shows we do. Good to see you, Louis. But I don't know what the Paul thing means, unless he's making fun of the time that I fill in for Feinbaum, because I host Feinbaum a lot, and they need to change the intro music to better call Gall. That's all I'm saying.
Vanderbilt gonna knock the orange people out.
It's very possible.
Are we there yet? Are we? Do we just want to hold on that right now?
No, we'll hold. Okay. We'll hold.
All right.
What would be
hold for applause?
How about this? What would be amazing is if the two UTs are locked into playing in the SEC championship game, and they both lose in the season finale to their.
I like Vanderbilt. I shouldn't act like that's a bad thing.
It's a great thing for you.
Oh my gosh. I think I'm at a point. I think it's like a Stockholm thing now, being a Tennessee resident for almost 20 years. A little bit of sympathy where I'm just like, y'all got to stop having these just like the heart pulled out of the chest cavity and shown to you as you fade out. Like, God.
The problem is the one thing Tennessee's had so many and this is a different subject for a different podcast, but Tennessee fans have had so many opportunities for sympathy from the outside world, and every time they are in a position to earn sympathy from the outside world, they shit down their leg and turn it into some other thing that wasn't really relevant before that moment happened. Lane Kiffin, we can go down the list. It all starts the night they drove old Kiffy down in 2009. When he needed a police escort to get his children out of the house. That's where it went awry. UT fellow alumni. Fellow alumni. Anything else on the schedule this week? I mean, again, Missouri, South Carolina, we talked about. Florida, LSU, we talked about. Georgia, Tennessee, A&M, Kentucky, Alabama, Auburn, RN.
ULM, baby!
SoCon Saturday. Here we go. Somebody from Texas. I don't know how to pronounce your name here. Lozek. Love the podcast, Braden. Always enjoy listening to you and Louis chat it up on 11:50 a.m. Thursday mornings in College Station. I went radio voice on you there.
Everything's house money right now at 8 Yeah, I know you want to be.
Isn't it?
You want to beat Texas. I get that. I totally get that. But everything's house money. It's a good time to be in College Station.
It's to your point about acquiring all the data at the end of the year. Like in the moment, it's hard if you lose to Texas because it's such a big game, such a big moment.
Totally, yeah.
But come next May. You're going to look up at a potential 10-2 record or 9-3 record and go, wow, that's the best first year we've ever had.
You know what I was writing about for the Washington Post last year about A&M? I mean, it's insane to see this program rebound in such a short amount of time.
As I always say, and I guess we'll leave on this, as no program is immune to bad decision making. But there are certain programs that when they make good decisions, they have more advantages than everybody else.
Sure.
And it is the same. I call it national championship DNA. And I know you don't, this is not your bag. It's mine. There are more of them in the SEC than anywhere else by a large margin. And that's kind of the difference. It's just access to players and unlimited resources. There's about 8 of them in this conference, and there's at most 3 in other conferences. Now the Big Ten has like 4 or 5.
Hey, Braden, guess what?
This is why they expanded.
Guess what?
What?
Found the tweet.
Oh, my God, really?
Oh, yeah.
Are you going to start writing names down?
Shout out to Dog 007 Ice.
Does
You clowns are screaming how little you know and don't actually talk football.
Can you do some more dramatic readings, please, of tweets?
Willie Beam 24. Have y'all been watching UGA the last couple of years? Because it don't seem like it.
Do these people have pictures on their avatars?
No, it's usually UGA stuff. Dog fan and TN says, just say you don't know or watch ball. I got the F around and find out meme just sent to me randomly. Hey, Bobby at Bobby Carlisle says, y'all small brained idiots. Jeremiah Fink says, his Jeremiah Fink with 2 underscores in case you want to hit him up. Uneducated and lazy. Big Dog, who has what I think might be a bot generated deal here. Big Dog 23 said, are y'all this uneducated? Georgia has had a top 5 offense in college football for 3 years in a row.
Again, that's where I started responding. You obviously didn't listen to our conversation.
Yeah. At DeRosa Brave says the laziest.
DeRosa?
Yeah, Mark DeRosa used to play for the Braves.
Ew.
These takes are bad considering the offensive rankings. I like that you let me. Ew. Evil UGA Dynasty says they just allow anyone to have a show. What are you, Canadian?
Ew.
You Canadian? Here's my favorite. Austin. Ban and 11.
Wow.
UGA is physical and attitude on each side of the ball, not conservative. They pass for a lot of yards and have been explosive in recent years. They don't go in a hurry up like an Ole Miss or Vols, but play nothing like 2011 Bama. Yeah, guess what?
Yikes.
Yeah, you want to revisit that one, homie? Oh, wait, this one got blocked or muted. Oh,
ew.
How do you start with ew?
Ew.
Evan Hollingsworth just uses real name. You ready?
Yep.
My number one biggest fear in life is getting to a point where I convince myself that people would actually want to hear me discuss football enough for me to manufacture a podcast about it and then proceeding to sound this stupid on said podcast. Georgia's offense scored 46 points per game that year. Evan, how are things going, Evan? Let's see how things are going for Evan.
You're sounding a little bit like a blend of an SEC redneck and like Mike Gundy from his press conference yelling.
Because I've got championship DNA.
Like, guys, you come home. Upset.
Oh, you know what? Evan hasn't tweeted in a while. It's not since November. Let's see. What do we got? Evan,
probably since the day they lost to Alabama.
Oh, here it is. There we go. Bobo. It's his dumb little face that pisses me off the most.
Is he talking about Mike Bobo?
I guess.
Now that's worth it right there. Getting to that one is worth it. Maybe that's where we should end it. His dumb little face that pisses me off.
Georgia was down 2 scores with a 3% chance of hope, and Mike Bobo decided to throw a screen pass. That confirms the staff has no confidence in Carson Beck. Why is he even out there? There should never be a time at the University of Georgia where the kid given the opportunity to play quarterback is a hindrance. That's good word usage.
Yeah, these are pretty good.
You have to find a way to scheme the offense around him rather than a weapon that you want to scheme the offense through ever.
All right,
so Evan, shout out Evan. If you it seems like what Evan is saying is the offensive system at Georgia isn't good. I will take my apology when you are ready.
So thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. Rate, review, subscribe, thumbs up, all that good stuff. ML Rose, please. Split Zone Duo. Ew. Here's what you sound a lot like, and I'm gonna reach out to him because I'm buddies with him, and I'm gonna drop this name a little bit here. But Corey Forrester, who is one of the well-read liberal rednecks with Trey Crowder and Drew Morgan, huge Georgia fan, friend of the pod, friend of the show, has been on the show a bunch of times actually.
Okay.
You do sound a
little
little
bit. Where is he
from?
from?
He's from Chattanooga, and he's a huge Georgia fan.
Okay, well that would make sense because like the accent in
you are sounding a little bit like Corey Forrester. So I'm going to get him to do some you need to send me the tweets. I'm going to see if I can get him to do some dramatic readings and see if I can get him to
all my people are from between Macon and Johnson City, so that would track.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
I think he grew up in North Georgia, but like South Chattanooga.
Yeah, I'm told I have my Georgia accent is more north, even though I'm from Texas.
Not quite Decatur, but you know what I'm saying.
It's not bright white light like it is down in Valdosta.
DeKalb County. All right. Thank you for hanging out with us, everybody. We do appreciate it. We're done.
Ew.
We're done. Ew. Enjoy the weekend.
I hate your take.
I don't want your life. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks for watching.
Stupid politics.